Great. Welcome everybody to the Young Women's Circle. First of all, we know that R.I.S.E is here to support women of all ages in workplace and beyond. And today we have the unique opportunity to hear from some young women to tell us a little bit more about what life is like for them growing up, probably in the pandemic, but just growing up in the world anyway. I'm really excited to be here. I got involved by meeting Helena, the executive director, 2 years ago, and was inspired by her comments about R.I.S E. And here I am at my first R.I.S E conference, and I'm happy to know that R.I.S E is in its 3rd year, and attendance is rising and rising, which is really great. So great success, which means it's really an important subject. I'm delighted to be here. I'm the head of the Woodward School for Girls in Quincy, just outside of Boston, where we serve students grades 6 to 12. I'm really honored to have the job I have because it's such important work. And as a mother of 4 sons, it's really great for me to be in an environment of all girls, even though I have 2 young granddaughters growing up, and they're the joy of my life the same way that my job is. So let's get on with the Young Women's Circle and find out a little bit about what is in your life that causes you to be inspired, how you get connected, and if you have any mentors that you know about. So the way we're going to run this is I'm going to ask each of you to take a few minutes now and just introduce yourself with a couple of words of where you are at school and what you're doing. Then I'll be facilitating the session with some questions that we have. We'll also be paying attention to the chat to see if there are any other questions in there that we can bring to the audience. So please, to the panelists also, if you just raise your hand when we ask some questions, I'll be able to call on you. My plan is not to call on everybody for every same question because we want to have a little more variety, and we've only got a little time to get all of this information in. So let's get started with our conversation. And remember, this is a conversation about you and what you can share about what's going on in your life as a young woman and some of the struggles you've gone through, some of the wonderful things that have happened, what inspires you and provides you with the energy and enthusiasm that you have. So I'm going to begin now by asking Alexis, if you want to begin and introduce yourself.
Well, hello everyone. My name is Alexis Carrasco. I currently go to the University of Alabama. I am a freshman, and I am the current Distinguished Young Woman of Rhode Island for the year 2020.
Great. How about Swetha?
Hi guys, I'm Swetha Vissapragada. I'm a senior at the Woodward School for Girls in Quincy, and I'm currently applying to college for musical theater, which is taking up a lot of time, but it's very exciting.
Great. And how about Mia?
Hello everyone. I'm an 8th grader at Sophia Academy, and my current job at the school is being an 8th grade ambassador.
Oh, great, thank you. And how about Kaitlyn?
Hi everyone, my name is Kaitlyn Amado, and I'm a senior at Lincoln School, and I'm also applying to college right now, hoping to major in biology on the pre-med track.
Okay, well, this is a busy season for college applications, I know that. So let's begin. One of the first questions that I thought would be helpful would be, as a young woman today, how would you describe what it's like to be a girl? That could be, are there some opportunities that you see as advantages? Are there disadvantages that you experience? And what can you say about that? Anybody want to raise a hand first, or I'm always good at calling on people. So Alexis, let's begin with you. Now that you finished your college applications, right? A year ago.
Being a woman is definitely just something that is a privilege in itself, but also there are a lot of disadvantages because of the way that women are viewed and the way that women are treated in society. But also you have to think of it as before there was me, before there was any of us, there were women who paved the way for us, and they softened the land that we all are stepping on. We still have a lot of work to do, and we still have to pave our own ways, but we have to be thankful for the women that came before us and made the ground a little bit softer for us.
Yeah, that's a great point. Being thankful for those who came before us, but knowing we have to tread waters in front of us, right? And continue the hard work. Anyone else have a comment on that? Swetha, do you have something to say about being a woman today? What it's like to be a
Yeah.
girl?
I think kind of like what Alexis said, it's such a blessing at the same time because it gives you a completely different perspective. You're a lot more considerate of like the repercussions of people's actions and the ways like different things can be perceived, and you're a lot more like nurturing and kind of like compassionate to those that need it because you understand how it feels to be treated as a second-class citizen. And we know like the sort of like doubt that that creates, but we also know how to combat it. So it sort of creates this type of person that is willing to help other people because we understand how it feels to feel like we don't have that opportunity.
Yes, definitely. That's definitely in a lot of the literature about how women leaders are more nurturing and compassionate, and some people see that as a positive and a negative. So, so any other thoughts from anyone? Okay. Okay. Amia, sorry, are you muted?
Okay. How I would describe being a girl in today's society is that the disadvantages are that we're held at a higher standard. So oftentimes we have to watch the way we speak, look, and act, and especially how the media portrays us. We have to look a certain way to actually be deemed as beautiful. And it's very harmful for young girls like me, and especially when most of the girls in the media do not look like me.
Great, really good point. All right. So another question would be, you know, as you are where you are in your life, some of you over your head with applications right now, one of you is actually in college, and one of you is still in the middle school watching what's coming ahead. What are your best hopes and your worst fears as you are in the place where you are in your life right now? How about Kaitlyn?
I feel like my hopes is that more women are going to go into the STEM field so I won't have to find my place, because especially since our society, that is a field that is male dominated and usually women are like pushed aside. But I'm kind of hoping that more women partake in it so that I won't have this fear of it. But also like I do worry that since it's not a field that many women partake in, they will feel discouraged to try to take the risk. And that's like what I worry for the future.
Great, great. Well, I think that sounds exactly like the Lincoln School mission, isn't it? When I believe that they talk about exploring opportunities and responsibility and taking it on full steam, right? So, or full STEM, I should say, right? How about Alexis? Do you have a thought to your best hopes and worst fears? Because everybody must have different ones, right? Or maybe they're the same.
Well, actually, I love that you brought that up because I'm currently a biology major on the pre-med track, and I constantly find myself trying to prove myself. And I had to realize that, like, you know, as much as I love color coding my notes, and everyone else in my class is not color coding their notes, they don't have pink pen for talking about certain cells and things like that, that I have to do this for me. And it took a little bit of time, and I realized that the people around me, they're going to go on their own tracks. They're going to do their own thing. They might not even stay in biology or be on the pre-med track, but it's more so what I want for my future. And I know that in the future, I want to become a pediatrician. It's been something that's been on my mind for a really, really long time. So I know that like I am making my own path, and I have to, again, pave my own way so that you feel more comfortable coming right after to be able to take on a biology major and be on the pre-med track. And those who come after you, there's more women filling the classrooms. So I hope that like that's what I'm most comfortable with and what I hope for the future.
Great, that's wonderful. Mia, what do you think about being an 8th grader? What might be your hopes and or your fears?
Definitely one of my best hopes is getting into a high school that I actually love and I feel comfortable in it and comfortable speaking out and raising my voice into what I believe in. But one of my worst fears is not taking risks or opportunities because
That's okay.
I apologize. Not taking risks and not taking opportunities because you never know. You might benefit from it, you might not benefit from it, but it's okay to take risks.
Good response. And how about Swetha? What do you think about fears and hopes?
Yeah, so kind of like what everyone else has said is I'm really just paving my own way in
Mhm.
the entertainment industry. So I'm Indian. My parents immigrated here from India, and I was born here. And I've like kind of just sort of grew up with like no representation, and like you kind of settle for what you get.
Mhm.
And so what I've had to really like unravel during this whole application process is why exactly I'm going into this incredibly competitive field. And it's sort of just because I want to tell stories, but I also want to help pave the way for other women of color to tell their own
Mhm.
stories because, like everyone else has said, it's really discouraging knowing that you're going to be such a minority in your own field when you already are in life. Um, but I think that's also what is so important about going into the fields that you're passionate about, even if it's just you. It's that you're doing what you're meant to do and you're helping provide
Mhm.
other people with the confidence to do what they're meant to do as well.
Mhm. That's great. That's a great answer. And how about Kaitlyn? Do you have some thoughts on that?
As like I mentioned before about the the STEM major and stuff, definitely I would say as Swetha mentioned, like being a person of color, it's kind of hard to find your way. And especially since I'm first generation, like I don't have my parents knowing exactly how it's going to be for me. So it's very
Mhm.
unknown and that is
Mhm.
definitely fearing me. But knowing that I'm doing it for myself and not for anyone else is definitely pushing me to continue on the right track.
Mhm. That's terrific. That's great. Um, so, is there someone in your life or an experience that you've had that's had a deep impact on who you are now, particularly as it relates to leadership or confidence? Is there anything that you can share that's happened to you? Alexis? Great, thank you.
So just recently, um, I went through like my first heartbreak. Like it was just like everything was just kind of, I felt like everything was tumbling down, especially the fact that because I came to Bama because of COVID, I had never stepped
Mhm.
foot on campus. So everything just
Oh,
kind of
wow.
hit all at once. And I was like, I'm not prepared. I just turned 18. I'm not even a woman yet. I'm still like a little girl. Like, I can't believe my parents are going to leave me and I have to do my own laundry now. Like, this is unbelievable. But like, everything
Yep.
just kind of hit me all at once. And I remember my first night in my dorm, I was absolutely scared. And I was like, I can't do this. I've never been down south.
Mhm.
And soon you realize
Mhm.
that change is inevitable and you have to let it happen. You have to be uncomfortable and you have to let that just like take up every little bit of you. And you have to feel like, at first I don't belong at all. Because then
Mhm.
eventually you find your people, you find things that make you happy, you find your own confidence in yourself. Because I was relying on other people around me. And being by myself
Mhm.
taught me that, it's okay. I'm going to make it. And look how far I've come. Like, I've made so many
Right.
new friends. I'm doing really well in all my classes. I still keep in contact with my parents and I'm not like calling and texting them all the time, like, hey, um, I miss home. Like, it's not the same thing anymore. And I just feel like I'm my own person now and I'm truly finding myself again.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, this COVID, thank you for sharing this. This COVID experience is certainly trying on all of us. And I think you're kind of right in the same place. I have a couple of women colleagues who've been talking about just having a breakdown in the last 2 weeks of just saying, I just can't do this anymore. My life is so boring. I can't do anything. And then they gather it together and say, I can go on, we're all in this together. It's unprecedented. It's going to go away, but it's a long time. So, Swetha, do you have a thought to either someone in your life or an experience that you've had that's impacted you as the woman and leader that you are today?
So I've been at Woodward since I was in sixth grade. So I've been here
Hmm.
since I was 11 and I'm 17 now.
Yep.
And
Okay.
I was really lucky because I like got to kind of grow up and go through like some of like the most important like years of your education in an environment where I could just like speak my mind and ask like dumb questions so I could understand like
Hmm.
exactly what was going on. Um, and like I've never really like felt like a leader almost. It was kind of just like, I'm free to make my voice heard. And that if other people are a little bit less confident or less sure of themselves, I'll talk to them one on one and then bring their concerns to light. So I've been lucky because I've really had my voice nurtured, and I've had so many people in my life who have kind of reassured me when I doubt myself, which is a lot, but have kind of just reassured me that, you know, you're doing the right thing. This is your path, and you have to stick to your truth and what you want, even if other people are telling you that you shouldn't.
That's a great answer. Great answer. How about Mia?
Definitely someone who has impacted me in my life is definitely my grandmother. She always she always been an inspiration for me because, you know, she came from the Dominican Republic, and, you know, she came with my grandfather, and she had 4 kids, and, you know, she kind of like, she made her own store, and she kind of like, she was raising children too, so she was always an inspiration for me. And also she always believed in me when I didn't believe in myself, and she always encouraged me to take risks, and that education is one of the most important things that a woman can have. So I would always be inspired by her.
Wow, that's a really wonderful story. And aren't you lucky to have a grandmother telling you that at the 8th grade and maybe before? That's really a wonderful, wonderful advantage. And how about Kaitlyn? What kind of experiences have you had, or people who have influenced you in a way that you think has already made a change on you?
I feel like my mother has a big influence on me, especially me being like a normal high schooler. I complained to her a lot about like the workload and everything else. And like one thing that always stuck with me is how she always told me, if you want change to happen, you can't rely on others to do it. So like I feel like that's what kind of pushed me to like run for student government and try to make the changes I wanted to happen in the school, but also shed light on the voices that were like ignored. And I feel like without her saying that, I probably would have never like tried to take leadership roles, and that just had like a big impact on me.
That's great. That's great. So I know that when we got organized for this, I told you that I'd tell you all the questions ahead of time, but there's a new one in the chat, so I'm going to read it to you, and you can think about it. But you know, the question is to please ask the girls to talk about one thing that they might need from a professional woman. And I'm sure you've, you know, got yourself familiar with what R.I.S.E does. And R.I.S.E is really all about inspiring and supporting women, also setting up mentors, you know, because when you have a mentor, and maybe some of you do, you could speak on that, that mentors, you know, help build your confidence. I always say my mentors hold my hand, and I get through things that I wasn't sure I could get through. So if you were to think about, you know, even a woman at R.I.S.E, what would you want a professional woman to be able to provide for you? Hi, Alexis. Okay.
I would
Thank you.
definitely want to sit down with someone who is in the career that I'm looking for, anywhere near like health and sciences, and just know like the hoops that they had to go through, what they learned, what are their most important things that, or mistakes that they learn from, so I don't, you know, make those mistakes, or I learn to make my own mistakes that I can learn from. And just helping me throughout the process. I would definitely, most definitely need that little bit of encouragement too.
Yeah, that's a great answer, because there is a saying, nobody has time to reinvent the wheel, right? And if somebody's already done something, let them tell you about it, because you can either use it, change it, alter it a little bit to be a little more like you. A lot better than starting at the beginning, right? So Mia, do you have a thought to that? If there was a professional woman that you could access, what would you want her to do for you?
I think support, actually. You know, I'm applying for high schools, and I'm looking at my options. I'm attending open houses and meetings, and it's pretty difficult applying and financial aid and application. So I would definitely need support, and, you know, someone to guide me through the process.
And that could probably pertain to college or careers as well, helping you through the process of how do you take the steps? What are the steps I have to take? How do I prepare? Swetha, how would you answer that?
Yeah, I think that I would really like to sit down with someone that's in my field, but also just anyone that can kind of provide insight in like what it's like being in the workforce as a woman fresh out of college, because I think that there are so many different opportunities, but also so few opportunities. And there are a lot of ways that we as women are perceived that are different than men are perceived, and sort of how to make yourself applicable to lots of different opportunities and different jobs and how to make yourself stand out, but also the trials and errors and like insight into exactly what we're going to have to deal with when we get out into the workforce.
Yeah, insights are really valuable, right? And Kaitlyn, how would you answer that about what would you look for in a professional woman mentoring you?
I feel like I would want the support and also for someone to listen, just like to get an insight, since I am, like I mentioned, a first generation student. So, like, I want to know how I can make a name for myself right in college, especially since I don't know what I'm getting myself into. And usually, like most of the colleges I look for, most of the population has a really small percentage of Black African American students. So already I'm starting off like not on the right foot. So it's hard to know what to expect, but like just knowing that someone has gone through it and that they did succeed and like made a name for themselves will kind of be like reassuring.
Sure, yeah, that's very helpful. So how about moving to a different question that's really about passions that you might have, interests that you have. Is there anything in particular that you kind of feel like a Greta Thunberg or something on a passion, and what would you like to see change in that area? So Swetha, great, thank you.
I think representation just for everybody, like I said, I used to have to settle for it. And like when I was younger, my favorite Disney princess was Jasmine because one, her dress was my favorite color, but she was the only one that looked like me. But I'm not Middle Eastern. And it was sort of, I just felt like I was constantly settling for these different things and compromising on something that no one else had to compromise on. And I just kind of wanted to see like somebody that understood what I was going through or somebody that like represented or told my story. And so I am really a strong advocate for proper representation, not just of different ethnicities, but also like sexualities, genders, but different people's stories and different voices that need to be heard. Because I feel like there are so many different perspectives and there are so many journeys and things that have gone buried by time or by purposeful intent that deserve to be brought to light and deserve to be given proper attention.
Oh, great. That's a wonderful answer. Alexis, do you have a thought on that? On a passion that you might have and what you'd like to see change in that area?
I definitely want to see more people in the government that are younger because older generations have had their chance. And I really hate to say it, but they're not going to be able to see the consequences of a lot of their actions, and they have a lot of old ideals that they're carrying with them. And having younger people, especially running for president or sitting in Congress, like AOC. Oh, I love AOC with all of my heart. And I love that everyone's nodding because it's all agreed that this woman, she stands for the people. That's why when you walk outside of her office, there's Post-it notes everywhere and there's flags because people love her because she speaks for them. But you see older generations who are in the government and they don't speak for the people as well. I mean, you have Bernie Sanders and things like that, but he doesn't stand for everyone. So I'd like to see younger people getting more involved with politics because they're our future.
That's great. That's wonderful. And how about Kaitlyn?
I'm really passionate about like justice and equality for everyone and just trying to make people aware that the struggles of an African American is very different from the struggles of a Latinx, someone who identifies as Latinx or someone who's a part of the LGBTQ plus community. Sorry, it always takes me a long time to pronounce that. But just like being aware of those struggles and like being open to new ideas, especially since a lot of people in our generation and even older generations are very closed-minded and believe that just because they perceive one thing a certain way, that it's perceived the same way for everyone else. And I definitely feel like once we can get people to become more open-minded and like open to the idea of change, then definitely racial justice and like justice for everyone basically could happen.
Okay, that's great. And me,
Apologize for the loudness, but a particular issue that I'm very passionate about is definitely police brutality. I try to educate people around me and my peers, especially in my classroom. I try to educate them how the justice system is based on systematic racism and oppression, and how police officers are actually they're overusing their powers and using violence. When you apply to be a police officer, you're in the line of duty, and even if it's someone who's dangerous, you're supposed to get them out alive, and that's not what's happening now. So something that I'm really passionate about is definitely police reform, because our justice system is disgusting.
Right. Great. So this has been very interesting. I really appreciate this honesty and just the whole savviness that you have of understanding the world. It's really great. You must have some great mentors in front of you. And so when you think about, we're at this conference that's all about women and women connecting and helping each other. And, what does it mean today? You answered some of this about being a girl, but what empowers you and what helps align you to your future? We talk a lot in girls' schools about having your voice and how important that is, and it can mean 100,000 different things. But what does it mean for you today? And Alexis, I think I saw you raising your hand, so I might go to you first.
Definitely people like Mia, because when you were talking, like every time you open your mouth, I'm like, oh my God, like, why wasn't I like this when I was in 8th grade? Like, that's crazy. You're in 8th grade and I'm sitting here, like, I'm so happy to be in all of your presence, because it's, again, younger generations that are going to like take over the world and rule the world. And it's so nice to see people that are educated, that are willing to educate themselves and learn more. And it just pushes me to keep going, because again, it's that paving the way. We're making the land softer for you to step on. So when you go to college and you go and explore the world, you're not struggling as much. You will see people who look like you representing you, whether it be in your classes, your teachers, or even in the government. So it's just people like that just you like amaze me. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah.
No problem.
I agree. Thank you. Swetha?
Yeah, kind of going off of what Alexis said, I think it's like, so when, like back in March, when like Corona, like the school shut down, everything was shut down, we were all in lockdown. The thing that I kept running into was like, I don't know how to explain to people that you're supposed to care about other people. Like, we're supposed to wear masks so people we care about and people other people care about don't get sick. And that's kind of been like a common theme with society and politics and the 500 different things that have happened this year. And it's really inspiring and empowering to me to see other people who understand that we are supposed to be looking out for each other, and we should not stand by when it's so obvious that certain people are not being looked out for, and we're supposed to push for them and help them. And I spent a lot of my time like arguing with my parents about this, and it's like exhausting. It's like, I don't understand how I'm supposed to explain to you that like this is not the way that things should be. And it's really empowering to see like so many people come together to fight injustice and like right all these wrongs that should have been righted a really long time ago. So for me, I think the most empowering thing that I've experienced is sort of just like this huge wave of people who are like, okay, this is it. It's time for change.
That's a great response. Anyone else have one that they want to share? Mia or Kaitlyn? No? Good. What about your teachers at school? I'm thinking of Alexis, how many years she's been in school. Probably 15, 16 years, right? Others 12 or 13, some 8. Do you have some memories of some teachers and what impact they may have had on you and why, or anything like that you want to share? I know that wasn't on the sheet either, but I'm just thinking about it as we're evolving here. So, Alexis?
I think about my 5th grade teacher, Miss Fish, who she was the first person to actually teach history correctly. She didn't sugarcoat anything that was happening in history class, and she read to us books. one of them was One Crazy Summer, and it was talking about the Black Panther Party. And usually that has a negative connotation, but it talked about how they started free breakfast programs and how they encouraged children to go to school and get an education and things like that. And one thing that I always remember her talking about was, we were learning about Abraham Lincoln, and she was like, he didn't set out to abolish slavery. He was just doing it because the Union was losing. And I remember sitting there in class and I was like, he didn't want to abolish the slaves right away. This is the number one thing I've been taught. What do you mean? I'm learning history incorrectly? And I was figuring this out, like my whole mind just completely exploded. And I was in 5th grade. And this woman taught us that if we want to learn history, we're going to have to teach it to ourselves. And that's kind of where self-education started becoming a really big tool. And I realized that a lot of the history I was learning was really, really toned down and sugar-coated, and that I had to take it upon myself to learn.
Yeah, so have you used that process in your education through high school and now into college? Probably in college more, but of the self-education?
Definitely, especially because of COVID happening and like most of my classes being online, but it's actually been a tool that has helped me a lot understand my learning techniques and what I like to do and what I don't like to do with learning. So it's definitely helped me.
Great. So Mia, did I see a raised hand?
She relates to Alexis, actually. I always remember this teacher. Her name was Miss Traub, and she was my social studies teacher. From like 5th grade, I've always been interested in social justice, and she taught us about the Christopher Columbus story and how they taught us that he was this great man that founded America. And when she actually taught us the real story, I was like so confused as well, because I learned that he was a very good guy. And like, I feel like I wouldn't imagine myself in 5th grade talking to a panel like this and actually speaking out, because from a young age, I was very shy and I didn't really have that much friends, and nor did I want to speak out. But definitely my school has helped me to use my voice for those who cannot speak for themselves. And I'm definitely grateful for that.
That's great. Kaitlyn, do you have a thought on that?
I would also say my history teacher too, but
oh wow, we're all history and social studies here. Okay.
In 10th grade, she's like probably one of the most.
I think you're on mute.
Oh, sorry. Can you hear me now? She's like probably one of the most woke teachers I've ever met. Like, she does not sugarcoat anything. And like when we first started off class, she was like, we are not going to read the white savior complex stories. We're going to see every perspective. And it just opened my mind to how I was lied basically my whole life about America's history, and how she was like, this is not what happened. Like, they were not for the people, they were for themselves. And it just like changed the way I looked at everything.
Oh, that's amazing. That's amazing. Should write back and thank those teachers, right? Swetha?
So I spent like the last 5 minutes trying to decide which teacher to speak about, and I cannot. So for me, it would be my 9th, 10th, and 11th grade English teacher, Miss Toomey. So she was also a history teacher before she came to work at Woodward. And she, like, kind of what you all said, she was like, all right, so here's the deal about history. And there were like a lot of things that we didn't really know about. And I remember that we would have like discussions during lunch or during advisory or something about like the events leading up to 9/11 or the Cold War and like the rise of like the Red Scare in America and all these things that like we never got to in history class, so I never really knew about. And she would just provide us with all this context, and she and my history teacher, Mr. Barnes, never treated us any different because we were younger and we didn't know as much. They were like, your opinions are just as valid. Your perspectives are just as valid. Like, it's not like I'm above you and you need to listen to everything that I say. They really made sure that our voices were heard and our brains were being nurtured, and would like just engage in these like really, really intellectually stimulating discussions, which was like my favorite part. And I love history. So it was really, really, it meant a lot to me that it wasn't sugar-coated and I wasn't treated as if I couldn't comprehend things because I was younger.
So telling you the way it really was, and let you conclude from that, right? So, so one of the questions that I use a lot of times when I'm interviewing people for jobs or whatever, and it sometimes is, it's always very interesting, is what 3 words would you use to describe yourself? So I'm going to give you a minute or two and we'll talk about it, but it always ends up being that when we ask that, people have told me I thought about things that I've never thought about myself when I had to think about a word. And so I know some of you have said you used to be an introvert, but now you have your voice. And so is there anyone who's got the courage to go forward with what might be 3 words that you've used to describe yourself? And maybe a little bit of why? Oh, Mia, great, thank you. Mia? Mm-hmm.
I would definitely describe myself as bold, intelligent, and kind.
Ooh, okay.
Just because, like I said, I like to speak out and, educate people and tell them how it is. And so that's why I describe myself as bold, because, you have to speak out for what you believe in.
Mm-hmm. So is that something you and school supported? Do you get that at your current school now? Because you have a lot of confidence. It's really beautiful to see.
Excuse me, you were lagging. You were lagging. I couldn't hear you very well.
Oh, okay. What I was thinking about is, do you think that most of that boldness and kindness came from your grandmother, or do you think it's been supported and nurtured at your school? Because, as an 8th grader, you have a lot of confidence, and it's just very impressive. And so I'm wondering, if you can share with other people how you got so much of that. And maybe you're just born that way.
I think it's definitely both. It's definitely both, because in my school, we're taught perspectives, and we're taught a lot of different things. And as women in society, we're not always heard, or our voices are not always valued. So I learned that, especially as a woman of color, it's my job to kind of like, again, educate people and speak out, because I'm oppressed and I need to speak out, because if I'm not going to do it, who else is going to do it for me?
That's a great answer. Anybody else have something on that? Swetha?
Yeah, so 3 words that I would use to describe myself would, I think, bubbly. I get told that a lot, and I think it fits. Driven and passionate, I think. So I'm sure like all of you can agree that like if you are a person of color, academically, you have some very high standards set for you. And so I was constantly like, pushing, and I would be in like 2 shows outside of school and like taking all these classes, and I would just spend like every single second of my time, or what felt like it, like working. And like I wanted to take a break. I was like, I'm exhausted. But the second I did, I was like, I'm just thinking about the essay that I have to write. So I think that I have a history of applying myself, because I used to be really scared to. And because of that, I'm a lot more driven, because I have expectations to uphold, but also because I remember how it felt to be so scared to be that driven. And I think passionate, because I've been told that I get pretty passionate about certain issues, but I think it's just really important to be passionate about everything in your life, whether it be like the littlest thing or like, your overarching like goal in life, because like that's how you apply yourself.
That's a great answer. That's wonderful. And how about Alexis?
The 3
Oh,
words
I'm
I would
sorry.
use.
I think, okay, sorry. Had I called on you already? I was looking at Kaitlyn, but go ahead.
Oh, wait, me or
That is
Kaitlyn?
okay.
I'm so sorry. Okay, the 3 words I would use to describe myself is definitely powerful, persistent, and intelligent. And this is a little cringy, I gotta admit. But like as soon as I came down here, and again, like I just went through my first ever heartbreak. I was here for the first time. My parents just left. Like everything was just hitting me, and I remember crying. I cried, oh my goodness, so much. And this mirror in back of me. I
Yes.
literally used to sit there and like be like, you are powerful, you are intelligent, you gotta stop crying, you gotta
Right.
get it together, you
Okay.
got class in a little bit. And like I did that so much, and I'd like be blasting like music that was empowering me in the background, and finally like telling
That's
myself
great.
that, I started to believe it. And now that I'm able to say that in front of like so many people, that I am that, and not be able to cry and like point at myself while doing it, it's just such a good feeling, because I know that I am that. I know that I
Great.
had the capability to be that.
Great, great. So mirror, mirror on the wall, right? That's
Yeah.
great. Thank you so much, Alexis. And Kaitlyn?
I would describe myself as selfless and ambivert and determined. Like Swetha had mentioned, my parents are like the parents who say, if it's not an A, I don't want to see it. So
Uh-oh.
I have to be like very determined to like get the grades they want, but also like strive for my goals as well. And I would say I'm an ambivert because I feel like if I want to be a leader, I cannot be afraid to be in a social setting and be around many people, but also like time for myself. So it's a good balance. And I would say I'm selfless also because I try to put others' needs before my own, because that's just who I am, and like that's the values my parents have always taught me.
Great. That's wonderful. That's beautiful. So one of the subjects I'm thinking about, which again wasn't on our conversation earlier, but I'm thinking about social media and the impact of social media, particularly on girls, women. We've worked with a group called Media Girls who's come into our school, and I think have just opened our eyes up to just the impact of social media. So I wonder if anyone has a response to that. You know, I think about it as Instagram and Facebook, but it's Snapchat and it's TikTok and it's all kinds of other things now. And that's got to be a lot of pressure on you. And I wonder who's got any thoughts there. Swetha? Swetha?
Yeah. So it's really hard. Like, I don't think anybody can fit the beauty standard. It's like unattainable. But it's
Yeah.
really hard, you know, as a person of color to like, you know, see all these girls that are not the same race as me, are not the same build as me, do not have, I don't resemble them at all.
Yep.
And it kind of puts out this message that like, okay, like sure you're pretty, but you're never going to be this, and so you're not good enough. And kind of like what Alexis was saying, I also just went through my first heartbreak, and a really big part of that was that I would think like, you know, when I was in my room crying, listening to Adele or whatever, it was like, is it because I'm not white, because I don't fit the beauty standard? And it sort of social media puts out this message that like, you need to be this one thing, and if you aren't, nothing you do is ever going to be good enough, which is really toxic. But there's also like this part of me that was like, okay, you know what? No, because I think it also creates like this sort of like hostile environment where like, you know, the girls who do somewhat fit the beauty standard, like are constantly pitted against us, people of color. And every single woman on this planet, I think, has to deal with people making comments about her appearance, and her appearance is the first thing they notice, and it completely changes their perception of her. And that's not fair. And I think that social media also has played a really important role in bringing the unfairness of that to light and reinforcing the idea like we're all different people, and like our appearances are not the most important thing, but it's like if you're beautiful, it's like what's on the inside that matters, and it's okay if you don't look like what the images that are being put out are. So
And I think the thing about social media too is people aren't posting their normal days. They're posting the most incredible moment, right? And then we look at that and think that's their life every day, right? Anyone else have a comment on the impact of social media? Mia?
I would have to agree. Like, especially being a woman of color, like, you know, I don't really fit the beauty standards, and also